Imagine writing a love note to your crush, and the next day, the whole school knows about it. That's what happened to me when I was in middle school. I didn't even think she liked me back. I was just hoping for a yes. Instead, she turned it into the most humiliating moment of my entire life up to that point. I went from being the class clown to the kid who cried in class almost every single day. So how did it all blow up so fast? Let's start from the beginning. To establish the setting, it's important that you know that this wasn't even the first rejection I had experienced that year. Earlier in 8th grade, I told another girl I liked her. And what did she say? She said,
"Ew, I don't like you that way, Chadlet. You're gross."
Then she asked me to ask my friend if he liked her. Because, in her words, he was hot. That moment destroyed me. And by the time I met Serafina, my oneitis of this story, I was already a validation-seeking wreck. And on top of that, my body was working against me. I had gained significant weight between the ages of 8 and 13, and I still had this dumb haircut that made me look like the guy from No Country for Old Men. I didn't exactly feel like the guy that girls would be into. And the worst part? I had already stopped growing by age 12 due to precocious puberty, so by 8th grade, I was swimming in hormones way earlier than everyone else. You could probably smell the pheromones on me. I was obsessed with curves. Wide, motherly birthing hips, thick, jiggling thighs. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And that's exactly what Serafina had. A developing body that drew every guy's attention. And this beautiful, mixed-race, white Asian face with jet black hair. She looked like everything my raging hormones desired. Other guys whispered about her too, but I was one of the few willing to admit that I liked big, wide hips and fat asses. Back in 2009, when it was taboo to like anything other than a stick-thin, skinny supermodel. So when I saw her, I was hooked. Completely infatuated. I fixated on Serafina. It wasn't just a crush. It was more like an obsession. I remember the first time I saw her, I just couldn't look away. When I came to that school in the 7th grade, my best friend from the 6th grade abandoned me, pretended he didn't know me. I started out as a total social outcast, hanging out with the nerdiest, most uncool kids there. But due to my charisma and my sense of humor, I was able to endear myself to a wide variety of kids in every class until people started inviting me to hang out with their groups. And slowly, with a lot of effort, I was able to build up my social status and clout until I could honestly probably be considered one of the popular kids at that school. I was the class clown. Everybody loved me. And even though I didn't get the best grades in middle school, every single day felt like it was jam-packed with fun, joy, and excitement. Little did I realize that all of that would change just a few months into the 8th grade. Now, I had mentioned earlier about my raging hormones, and I had found myself drooling over a few girls in the 7th grade, but that was nothing compared to Serafina. None of those girls had the body shape that she did. That perfect, pear-shaped symbol of femininity. Serafina didn't start out the school year with the rest of us. She came in as a new girl from a different school, about a month into the 8th grade school year. The moment she joined the school, my world went from a carefree life of innocent joy and happiness to an endless hell of butterflies in the stomach, sweating palms, anxiety, seething jealousy, and body insecurity. I had a few classes with her, and because we had similar initials, we would get paired up in groups and close by each other in a lot of school activities like field trips and fire drills. And I am 100% sure she noticed me staring at her. And to her credit, she was a pretty good sport about it. If you've seen one of my previous videos about the radio show host who talked about how inferior short men were, I was reading one of his books at the time. And I had brought it to school to read during the silent sustained reading right before our science class. And I happened to be seated right next to this girl in that science class. And she noticed that I was reading this book, and she said,
"Oh my God, you like Michael Savage too?"
And my jaw just hit the floor. Like, not only are you the perfect girl for me, but we also have the same political views and like the same radio show host that none of these other people in this school even know about? I mean, what the hell are the odds of that? So that just made me want her even more, like we were meant to be together, you know? And even though I was a little small for 8th grade, I was still pretty close to average height. So the height thing wasn't really an issue yet. What was an issue, like I said, was my haircut and my weight. Add to that my wrecked confidence from that girl earlier in this story who said I was gross. And there was basically no way that I was ever going to get up the courage to tell this girl that I liked her. So day after day, as time went by, I became more and more obsessed with this girl. She would dominate my mind. I would think about her every day I came home from school. I would look at her for as long as possible so that I could solidify that image in my mind for later in the day, if you know what I mean. So because I didn't have the guts to talk to her directly, I realized that I would have to come up with a plan. And my best friend and I, we'd hang out almost every weekend, have a sleepover, play ping pong until 3 a.m., play video games. We'll talk about the girls we liked, the guys we didn't like, the latest gossip. Those were good times. But my friend was getting a little bit tired of hearing me want to talk about nothing but Serafina. So I proposed this plan where I would draw this beautiful picture of this medieval church on a hill with colored pencils, because I was a pretty good artist at that point. And I would make it kind of like a birthday card, that opens up. So inside the card, I just wrote something simple, like, I like you, will you be my girlfriend? I remember we were both laying in sleeping bags on the floor of my room. It was like 2 a.m, and I was looking over this card that I had just finished in the dim light of the hallway, thinking, wow, I really hope this works. I really hope this doesn't backfire. I was excited and terrified at the same time. And my friend reassured me. He was like, hey, I think it'll work. I think it's a good idea. But then I thought, how am I supposed to give this card to her? I mean, I certainly don't have the balls to give it to her directly. She would open it up, read it right in front of me, and she might reject me then and there. Half the reason I wanted to give her this card instead of telling her directly is because I didn't want to be there to see when she immediately rejected me. I wanted there to be some time for things to cool down so that if she did reject me, it would be a little less harsh. So I thought, well, how am I supposed to get her this card? And then it came to me. We all had the same science class after lunch, and we would leave our backpacks on the table during lunch and go off and do whatever we wanted without that heavy load on us. So I said, why don't I just go up to her backpack when no one's looking, unzip it, put the note in there, rezip it, and then run away. That way, maybe she'll find it when she goes home or something. She's like, hey, yeah, that's not a bad idea. So that was the plan. That very next week, I did just that. I remember so vividly. It was a bright, warm spring day. I walked over to that table with 2 friends, my Mexican friend and my short friend. The short friend ended up growing taller than me. They didn't even know what I was doing. They were like, bro, what are you doing? And I was just like, shh, be quiet. Guys, I was so nervous. I did not want people to see me doing this. My heart was racing, my palms were sweating, my hands were shaking as I unzipped the backpack and put that note in there as gently as I could, struggling to re-zip it, and I was able to do it within about 15 seconds. At that point, I speed walked away, and they kept asking me, dude, what did you do? Once we were about 150 feet away, I explained it to them, and they laughed. Of course, they thought it was funny. The freakiest part was that Serafina and I had science class together right after I did that. And I believe that we were all working on group projects together that day, so she wasn't sitting next to me, and I don't think that she actually found the note during that class. So that was that. I slid the note into her backpack, hoping for a sweet surprise. I went home that day, not knowing what her reaction would be. But what happened next was the opposite of what I had imagined. Little did I know, she found it, and she freaked out. One moment, I was just some awkward kid with a crush. The next, I was the school creep. So, how did a simple note turn into a nightmare? You'll see. Oh, and by the way, if you've had your own brutal rejection story or know how fast a rumor can spread, hit like so I can know I'm not alone. And to help motivate me to make more videos like this one, because the channel really depends on your engagement. Now back to the story. Next time I had science class with her, we were back in our regular seats, and I noticed that she was no longer sitting next to me. She was sitting across the room. I saw her there with her friends, looking over at me, snickering. I started shaking. Oh my God, what happened? And at this point, I knew I had to go up to her and ask her if she found the note, because she clearly wasn't coming up to me. So during the social part of class, I knew that this was my only opportunity to go and ask her if she found it. Time slowed down. Her and her friends were looking at me from across the room as I approached, and just the look on her face, like,
Ew, I'm better than you.
everything about this situation just screamed disaster. So I go up and I ask her, "Hey, Serafina, did you find the note I left for you?" And she says,
Yeah, you went through my backpack, you frickin' creep. You're a freak and a weirdo. You don't go through people's stuff like that. No, I don't want to be your girlfriend. You're a creepy stalker, and you went through my stuff. What else did you do in there? Smell my hairbrush? Don't talk to me anymore.
and that was the moment my whole life was turned upside down. I was devastated. I turned around, walked back to my desk, told my friends, and wept. I went home that night, totally humiliated, grieving the loss of what could have been. Little did I know, things were about to get much, much worse. Not only did I just go through the most brutal, humiliating rejection I had ever experienced, but over the coming days, I would find that my reputation had been destroyed. She told her friends, they told their friends, and before I knew it, the entire school knew. Everywhere I walked, I felt the whispers. I was no longer liked. I was just the creepy stalker. And it broke me. I cried almost every day in class from then on. I couldn't contain the feelings of worthlessness, seeing other guys my age, including my best friends, have girlfriends, seeing them get attention from women, only to know not only did my crush think I was a creep and a stalker, but every girl in school thought so too. And even though I didn't mean to be a creep or a stalker, I internalized those feelings. When she told me that's what I was, I felt that that's what I was. That label of creeper left a permanent psychological mark that left me damaged to this very day. In fact, I attribute that as the main reason why I have struggled with girls for the rest of my life. I had opportunities after that to potentially get a girlfriend, and I did not act on it because I was too afraid of being called a creep and a stalker again. So I decided it would be better just to not do anything. And this mindset absolutely set the stage for how I would handle my next oneitis when I would go into the freshman year of high school. But that'll be a story for another time. But those last 5 months of 8th grade were absolute hell. I went from a life of innocence, joy, and wonder at the world to an endless cycle of misery and self-hatred. From the class clown to the most depressed kid in school, I just couldn't hold it in. I became quiet. I could no longer focus in class. I would just put my head down, and people noticed, wow, what happened to Chadlet? Well, they all knew what happened because the whole school knew. I was a creep. I was a stalker. And things would only get worse from there. Even though I knew she no longer liked me, I still obsessed over her. I would stare at her. I couldn't stop thinking about her. And anytime I saw her give another guy even an ounce of attention, it would drive me insane with jealousy. And the next time we had class together, she never sat next to me again. She sat across the room with her friends, looking over at me. And to add salt to the wound, around the time all this happened, this new kid came to our school. I ended up seeing every single day Serafina run up to him during lunch or recess or after class and give him this big hug. And then I would hear out of the corner of my ear in class,
Oh, the new guy's so cute.
and I would just seethe with jealousy and rage every time I saw it or heard it. Just turned my blood to acid in my veins. Every day I saw her, it just added to my misery. Now, fortunately, I was able to sort of take control of the narrative after a month or two of these rumors floating around. Due to the goodwill that I had previously built up among all the different people in school, girls and boys. And I was able to, in one of the classes, go up to this group of girls that I knew were friends with Serafina. At first, when I went up to them, they were uncertain what the truth was. They said,
"Did you really stalk Serafina? She said that you went through her backpack and that you're a stalker and a weirdo and all this stuff. Is that really true?"
and these girls must have had a soft spot for me or something, because they heard me out, and after about an hour of convincing and explaining my side of the story, I was able to come away from it having fully redeemed myself. And I went from being, in their eyes, a creepy stalker weirdo to being the victim of a brutal, humiliating rejection and a cruel smear campaign. And as a result, I was able to fairly effectively turn the tide of public opinion in my favor. And as nice as that was, it could never fully heal the damage that had been done. That year, I hit rock bottom to a degree that I would never experience again until senior year. And during the last week of the year, she would do something that would just send me reeling. As a nice little cherry on top of all the reputation destruction and defamation. If you remember earlier in the story, I told you about my old friend from 6th grade who abandoned me and pretended I didn't exist. Well, he had grown quite a bit over those last 2 years and had developed some muscle, and he had grown a six-pack. And I remember one day he was showing off this six-pack. And here comes Serafina, and she says,
"Ooh, you're so hot. Can I feel your abs?"
and there she is, rubbing his six-pack abs right in front of me. I was right there, a foot away. Now, how do you think that made me feel? I'll be honest, it put me to tears right then and there. I ran off to sit by myself and cry. Why didn't she like me like that, I thought. I just felt completely worthless. But there is a silver lining to this story. This tremendous mental suffering and anguish that I went through motivated me to improve myself. It gave me the will and the drive to have a glow up and to lose the weight. And for those last 3 months of school, I really buckled down and locked in. I ate nothing but carrots, celery, and hummus every day for lunch. I went on a calorie deficit, like 1,300 calories a day. I got this Justin Bieber haircut, and this was back in 2010 when he was really popular. And because I kind of looked like him and my hair was similar, I thought, hey, I could probably rock it. In fact, after losing all that weight and going to school with my new haircut, I noticed an immediate transformation in how everybody treated me, especially the girls. I would walk by people in the hallway, girls and guys, and they would say, "Oh my God, Chadler, is that you? You've had quite the transformation." And I'm 100% sure that Serafina noticed. So we all graduated from middle school, went our separate ways, started out as freshmen in different high schools, and having just had this massive glow up, all of a sudden, at my new school, I was treated entirely differently. I was getting a lot more attention from girls, especially considering that we were all only 14 and I wasn't really considered super short yet. And my confidence had improved quite a bit. Now, I would never fully regain my confidence, but still, it was an improvement. And you'll never guess what happened just a few months into high school. As you might know, Facebook was really big back then in 2010. And what did I see one day when I was at my friend's house looking at my Facebook account? Serafina had sent me a friend request and a message. What did the message say? You're not going to believe this. It was the most sincere, heartfelt apology I have ever experienced. She took full accountability for her part in the situation. She apologized for spreading rumors. She wanted to start fresh. And just immediately upon opening this message, I just felt rejuvenated. Like my confidence went from here to here. And of course, I accepted her apology. I forgave her. And she went on to be one of the few girls that interacted with my Facebook posts all throughout high school. Unfortunately, we weren't going to the same schools, so who knows, if she was going to the same school, it's very possible that we could have had a relationship. And considering how much my looks had improved by the end of 8th grade, it also brings a new perspective on the events of her touching my friend's abs. Because it's very possible that she had regretted how she had treated me, especially seeing that I had become so much more attractive. And she was actually trying to intentionally make me jealous by touching my friend right in front of me because she desired my attention again. Food for thought. But that's not all. It turns out, after we graduated high school, we both decided to stay in the area and go to the local community college. And what would happen there at the local community college? Well, it turns out we had parked in the same area and took the same route to walk to campus. And I remember one day I was walking down the street, and who do I see coming towards me? But Serafina. And it's the first time that I'd seen her in years. And what she did next put a smile on my face. She spread her arms out from like 30 feet away, and she says, "Oh my God, Chadley, is that you? It's been such a long time. It's so good to see you. Give me a hug." And hugs me for like 30 seconds. And then she steps back, holds my shoulders, asks me how I've been. We catch up. And I ended up seeing her again a bunch of times around campus. And every single time I saw her, she would do the same thing. She would run up to me. She would hug me. She would be nothing but sweetness and smiles and just bubbly, giggly joy. And it made me so happy. We ended up connecting on Instagram and following each other. She, again, was one of the few girls that would like my posts. And you might be wondering,
well, why didn't you ask her out if you liked her so much?
And there are a few reasons for this. First of all, I was still very scarred by what had happened, and I was very uncertain as to whether she was just wanting to be friendly or she actually was interested. On top of that, noticing on her Instagram, it seemed like she may have been exploring her sexuality and possibly was no longer interested in guys. But in addition to that, she had actually lost quite a bit of weight herself by the time I saw her. And you might think, oh, well, that's great. But no, that's not great. Because as much as she had the perfect body shape, she no longer had that thick, fatty padding that really drove me wild. She had kind of gone in the fitness direction, and something told me that she wouldn't be willing to put back on all the extra weight just to appease me. I wanted a girl that not only had that feminine pear shape, but had that thick, fatty layer that swayed and jiggled as she walked. But we still stayed connected and kept things on friendly terms, even though we kind of lost touch for a little while. Here we are, 10 years later, and believe it or not, things get even more interesting. Back in 2020 or 2021, I decided to go ahead and send her a message on Instagram to see how she was doing. We had a little conversation, and I told her, I was like, hey, I don't really use this personal Instagram account anymore, but I started a small business and I made a new account for that. And I gave her the Instagram account, and believe it or not, she followed it. And over the course of the next several years, she would continue to interact with my posts and occasionally watch my Instagram stories. Until, fast forward to today, she's one of the first 10 people to watch, every single one. Almost like she has notifications on or something. And I just think, my, oh my, how the pendulum has swung. When I was interested in you, you weren't interested in me. Now that you're interested in me, I'm no longer interested in you. Why? Well, those pear-shaped thick girls are no longer my type. If you've seen my other videos, I like tall, athletic, towering, powerful women with broad shoulders and big hands and feet that can make me feel small and insignificant. But regardless, it still helps build up my ego to see this girl that I used to like who rejected me watching all my Instagram stories. And to make things even more interesting, I decided to send her a message about a year ago just to catch up again and see how she was doing. And she responded to one message. And then when I tried to continue the conversation, she left me on read. And I was just like, that's really weird. She's watching all my Instagram stories and now she left me on read. And then I check her profile and I noticed that she's taken all these pictures with this older guy. And he legit looks like an older, less attractive version of me. So now that I think about it, it kind of makes sense why she didn't respond to my message. Her new husband or whatever probably wouldn't be too happy with her talking to guys that she might have been previously interested in. Just makes me wonder, maybe she really wishes that she could be with me, but because I'm so broke, I'm not actually a realistic suitor. But yeah, to this day, she's watching every single one of my Instagram stories, and she's now having a kid with a guy who, ironically, looks like me. How the tables have turned. This experience didn't just wreck my middle school reputation. It wrecked me, psychologically, at a foundational level. My confidence never really came back. And to this day, over 15 years later, and I still freeze up when it comes to talking to women I'm actually attracted to. And that scar carried straight into high school, where it would set the stage for a rejection even worse than this one. But that's a story for another time. If you've been through something brutal like this, drop your story in the comments. I'd love to read it, and my subscribers are really supportive. And if you want to see another brutal rejection story, check out this one about the time I got brutally rejected and humiliated by the tallest girl in my college. She was 6'6", and I fumbled it so badly. You'll love it.